Hey, what's up, TikTok? This is Dr. Cunningham. I decided to join on this happy Sunday to add a conversation that I believe is necessary, especially with consideration of the millennial generation. The reason why I say this is because we are within a generation where we are between two or three or even four different generations that, especially the older generations that are expressing longevity. At one point in time in our history, life expectancy was different. I'm glad because of technology and also knowledge, literally information, where people are implementing information, where people are living longer lives. Not as long as it used to be in the Bible, where people were living to like 5, 6, 700 years old. However, to live to see 100, to live to see 90 years old is a blessing. For people to live now, here within the world that we live in today, to see 130 years old, 140 years old. I'm reading these cases where people are living very long lives. And because of that, that means that people are occupying places and spaces, purposes, and careers longer, which I think is a blessing. At the same time, millennials, we are within a generation where we were very much so encouraged to go to college. And because of inflation, lifestyles are more expensive. We're not talking about lavish life. We're talking about just the basics is expensive, which means that people are paying student loans while also working jobs to make money in order to maintain their life. And so I just want to make sure I say that with that caveat. But then along with what I just said is opportunities for upward mobility, climbing the ladder, whether it's in corporate or within the context of the church. Because if people are occupying places and spaces longer, then that means that there is only a few that could potentially step up into those particular positions when the timing is correct. At the same time, there's so many of us, and when I say that, I mean that truthfully and honestly, that are so qualified as leaders and have served faithfully for, we're not talking about just 10, 20 years, but some of us 30, 40 years in particular places and spaces. And so I want to make sure that I say that with that caveat, because I really am here from a place of peace. And what my perspective is this, is that with consideration of leadership, there's always a necessity for mentorship, for cultivation, to make sure that a person is ready and prepared to lead so that they can not only get the title, but to keep the title, and not for the sake of the title, but the life that goes along with the work and responsibility associated with the particular title. Now, what I'll also say is that we are in a new age of innovation, ingenuity. And the reality of the situation is that there are a lot of systems that have an infrastructure that actually does not provide enough girth for the sake of the growth of the particular systems. So what do I mean? That means that there are a lot of systems that are working and surviving off of skeleton infrastructure, which means that there's a necessity to increase personnel and even personnel within leadership roles. So from my perspective, when people are trying to fight over or make sure that they're viable or vetting for a position when there's possibly only 1 or 2 slots, there actually should be 5 to 10 slots, literally. And within the context of the church, one couple each equals 1 spot. But then I also want to make sure that I say with this caveat, as a single person myself with no children, that I believe there's a place for leadership who are also single. Because of our singleness, it doesn't take away from our maturity or from our wisdom. We bring a different level of, or different, because I'm not trying to say that we're at different levels, but it's just our life path was different. And we have a perspective that really warrants adding to the value of the systems that we are in. So I want to pause and make sure I say that, because sometimes, contingent upon people's lived experience, they respect people's life or think less of, because of the fact that they feel like they have to compete for a spot. Do you understand? If we remove the mindset and the necessity for competition, then it can bring about greater unity. Again, I'm about peace. I really am. And I'm about everyone who has really worked and expressed the qualities to have an opportunity to express their leadership. Do you know that there were certain things that I foresaw and foreknew? So I started my own business just because I was like, I'm not trying to compete with other people. Now, when you have a business, technically people will say, well, now you're over here in the marketing, you got to compete with other businesses. But I'm like, no, if I stay in my lane, if I remain true with consideration of where I am, and I'm a systemic thinker, I got a marriage and family therapy degree because the foundation of marriage and family therapy is systems theory. So we think about everything within the context of interconnectedness, relationships. How do we strengthen our relationships? How do we continue to create healthy boundaries while also maintaining healthy communication? And so there's a way for us to work together, speak together, not break down or try to tear down anyone else's character, but to still build each other up, recognizing that we can celebrate each other and each and every one of us are still leaders, whether there's a title or not. And so from my perspective, I do not require a title to express my leadership qualities on a day-to-day basis. But I also am the type of person that will move on to another place in space literally if I find that where I am is not a space that is expressing or conducively the growth that I require from my own life or within my business. And so even my choice to move to different places was for the sake of my own growth. And so it's never about anyone else. And I do not shy away from dealing with people having their perspective about me, because ever since I was young, people had their perspective about me. And I'm just kind of like, well, if you would like to have a conversation, I can explain. But at the same time, I've been told many times over, Norja, you don't need to explain anything to people. And that's the truth. I do not need to explain. But I'm so relational that I like to sit and have conversations. So if people want to know the real about Norja Cunningham, then they have every right, as far as I'm concerned, to say, can we meet so we can sit and talk for real and have a real conversation so I can know the reality and clarify what has happened, what was going on, where are you now? But I find that there are a lot of times where people make assumptions rather than going directly to the person, literally, and saying, can we speak? And it's because they've already created alliances with other people. And again, I don't want to think about this necessarily in systems terms, but that's considered triangulation. And that's a way of purposefully drawing groups of people together, and purposefully, through drawing other people together, pushes other people away. And people, whether they are purposefully or are not purposefully doing that. But what I can say is that when I worked with families, and I've worked with families for 20 plus years now, literally, and there are times where I purposefully made families feel mad or upset at me in order to draw them closer, because it's important for families to unify and to find a reason or a purpose to unify. And so sometimes unification starts with having an upset feeling or feeling a certain way about a person. But my hope is that particular skill set can be transferred to something that's important. Like, what is your next goal? What are you working on as far as your purpose? How are you jointly working on your vision together? Because then it's a matter of building up rather than focusing on fighting against something else. So it's about purpose rather than a cause. You understand? Well, those are my thoughts for today. Happy Sunday. Great morning. Have an excellent day. And have a great week.